Everyone, welcome to the Bioneers Indigenous Forum 2024. It's such an honor to be your host today, bringing in this very first panel for 2024. This is the 16th Annual Indigenous Forum. Seated and, yeah, thank you. It gets bigger and more beautiful every year. It's really overwhelming and just an honor to have you all here today. It was founded in 2007 and with the help of a lot of really important people at the very beginning has grown every year into an annual touchstone for all of us to come together, not just to bring Indigenous voice to Bioneers, but also a sovereign space for Indigenous voices to connect with each other, to have a place to caucus, to have a safe space to bring critical Indigenous dialogue to global conversations. So we're here to discuss the idea of rematriation, and these three powerful women leaders each have a practice of rematriation in their hands-on work and their community work, each emerging from their tribal values and also from an imbalance that we all acknowledge with extractive industry, with what happens when patriarchy runs out of control and what happens to Mother Earth. There's no understatement of the number of Indigenous women that appear on the front lines fighting for ecosystem and environment, as the ability that Indigenous women have between human mother and earth mother to communicate and as protectors of first environment. So we're here to suss out some of the ideas of the importance of rematriation, how it is made visible through the work that each of you do, to kind of not only highlight the work and the best practices that each of you express in your everyday life so that Native people can go back to their own communities and feel inspired to incorporate these ideas, the strength, the inspiration that these women give to do the good work in our own communities, and also for our non-Native allies in the audience to also have a better understanding of things that we've been saying for a very long time, right? Things that are more common knowledge among Native people that maybe we have not enough platform or not enough voice and visibility in the dominant mainstream society to bring understanding for why we're saying these things, why we're protecting these areas, why we're protesting against extractive industry and Western ways of dominating the landscape, right? We live in reciprocity with the landscape. So I wanted to take a moment I feel like you don't need introduction, but I'm gonna take a moment to just introduce our three panelists. Chief Caleen Sisk, it's so wonderful to have you back here again. She's been a guest of Bioneers and inspiring us and me for many, many years. She is the spiritual chief and leader of the Winnemem Wintu. They're from the McLeod River. She is restoring river. She is a water protector. She is a mother and a grandmother to her community, and she is also reintroducing salmon. The salmon population has been decimated to her river, so she's been working on a long fight to restore salmon to the McLeod River. Corrina Gould, my friend, my shiro, she's the tribal chair of the Confederated Tribes of Lashawn right here in the greater Hutchings area. She grew up in her ancestral homelands here. She's done so much. She has co-founded Indian Peoples Organizing for Change. She leads marches. She leads people to have the courage to protest in the city and the homelands when maybe they can't see the indigenous landscape that's underneath all the asphalt. She has been just a beacon of hope for protecting their ancestral shell mounds here in the Bay Area. These are their burial sites. The people of this area have led a fight that none of us should have to fight, to be able to protect their ancestors and keep their remains intact underground. And you've made incredible victories for, we're all cheering for you from all the way around. And then all the way from Aotearoa, we have Dr. Jessica Hutchings. Thank you for traveling so far to be here with us today. This is my first opportunity to meet you, and it's a really special panel for you to all be able to share together. So many similarities, but her work is also in rematriation. She is the caretaker for a large farm in her ancestral homelands. If you could say your tribes for me.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko ngai tahu te iwi ngati hui rapata hapu, kei etahi atu taha no India tōku mama no Gujarati ia. I'm known as a Mindian, a Māori Indian. Have whakapapa on both sides. Kia ora.
Thank you. She has a foundation there that she will tell you about, but also her work is incredibly fascinating work. It really upends this idea that we have of organic foods. Most of the organic certifications are of Western thought. They're very based in Western science and Western ideas of organics. But the Maori have different beliefs about the interconnection of community. They have a process by which you can become certified in Maori organics, and she's really leading the efforts in that way that we Indigenous around the world know that everything is connected, that we consume in our bodies and how it's grown and how that's grown in communities. So we look forward to learning more about that work. Thank you all for being here today. So I'm going to get right to the questions, and I think I'm going to switch up the order just a little bit because I really want people to have an idea of how each of you has had this calling to implement this idea of rematriation in your work. And if you could just, in your own words, expand a little bit more about each of your work with the land and with the ecosystems that you tend to, and this idea of rematriation in your work and how it came to you.
So clever. Oh, it is. That was a tall order, huh? How did it come? It's like pretty much born into it. Like Grams was born into it. She kind of showed me the way, the ropes, how do we keep our traditions? How do we keep some sense in a world that had changed, had flipped, had killed most of our people, and still continuing on in a way that we know our sacred places, we know the songs, we know how to do our prayers and where to go for that. But recovering is that the salmon lost their homes when the Shasta Dam was built. At the same time, we lost our homes when the Shasta Dam was built. And in our traditions, we believe that whatever happens to salmon happens to the people. And so when they lost their homes, we also lost our homes. But maybe we're at a time when the salmon can have their home back. Maybe we get our home back too. But it's just in the nick of time because the winter run salmon, they're on the endangered species list. If there was one for people, I think we would be on it too, for culture. And any culture that's lost for any lands is a loss to the world. And so we are trying to do the best that we can to recover, to maintain it, to try to direct the scientist. Probably our biggest challenge is science, and the slowest moving animal in the world has got to be science. They can destroy it in a minute, but it's like, oh no, we got to study that for 5 years. So I think that my destiny was already in place. We are a successional leadership tribe, which means we're born into those leadership roles. We're not voted in. And that it continues to do, just like the future chief is already in place in learning. But, we have to have our river back and our land back and our cultural places back and reconnect those things so that it's good for everybody. And land back or river back or all of those things is like, we're not asking for, someplace in Switzerland. We're asking for our homelands. And at a disadvantage in some cases, because now that it is a thing, land back 30-30, the governor is putting money into it. It's a challenge to get your land back without paying out the nose for it, because they know that nobody else would want that piece of land except for those Indians. Because we have sacred sites on them, because we have villages there, we have burial grounds there, whatever it is, it's like we're attached to that land. And so rematriation is an educational term that other people can start realizing what we're doing. So thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and the pathway that has come from this idea of rematriation? When was your calling to understand this term that we use often now, but how does it appear in your work, and when did you first start using it towards your own work?
I want to really be clear about this idea, this word rematriation. I do not want it to be used in the same context that decolonize has been used and misused for now in academia and other places. You can decolonize your shoestrings and all kinds of other things. Rematriation is not about that, right? And I think we really need to be clear about that, and that rematriation is Indigenous women-led work, right? And it's about bringing us back to our rightful place. It's about bringing our people back to our rightful places. It's about having no outside interference. And I really grasp onto that piece of one definition that we've been using a little bit. Like I said earlier today, Strawberry Creek ran from above the campus, through the campus, what we know now, past the street, down University, that there's a creek culverted. But there wasn't just one creek in our territories. There were hundreds of waterways in our territories that have now been culverted, right? Because human beings think that they know better what to do with water and that it was a nuisance. And so why build a bridge to go over it when you could throw it into some concrete, right? But rematriation is not also about leaving behind our brothers, our sons, our cousins, our nephews. It's about bringing people in as well. Can you see this idea that Janelle and I talked about? Janelle is the co-founder of Segurite Land Trust. We had been working on preserving and protecting the sacred sites of my ancestors in this territory for almost 30 years before we started doing the land trust. The land trust is a tool that we use in order to bring land back, because we had quite literally found ourselves homeless in our own homeland. And so when you look at just Alameda County, 425,000 square miles, I don't know, something crazy like that. And there was no Lashawn people that owned anything. Not a house, not a store, not a place that they could pray at, no place. UC Berkeley holds 9,000 of our ancestral remains and hundreds and thousands of our funerary items, just ours. They own thousands and thousands of others. But we had started this walk together. Janella came up with this idea of a walk. And I crazily said yes. And I tell this story a lot because I didn't know really what a walk was, right? But it's like, let's go for this walk and let's teach people what shellmounds were and are and where they're at. And we use this 1909 Nels Nelson's map. And we put together a walk that was almost 300 miles long. And we had people from all over the world that joined us on that first walk. And we walked from Vallejo down to San Jose and up to San Francisco. Doing that walk for 4 years, almost 300 miles, walking 18 to 24 miles a day, stopping at Shellmound places that were under parking lots and garages and bars and schools and apartment buildings and streets and laying down prayers, asking for those ancestors to remember us as we were remembering them. We were trying to stop development as this new thing came into the Bay Area, all this new money that was coming here because the internet was created. And yes, boys and girls, we were here before the internet. Before there were smartphones, before there were any of those things, that when that money came into the Bay Area, there was this huge wave of gentrification. And we see it today. Horrible today. Thousands of people in our ancestral territories that are living without a roof over their head. And that is not what rematriation is about. It's about remembering what our responsibilities are as Indigenous women to uphold our traditional values, to have places to pray, to pass on those knowledges to the next generation. And that's what we've been doing. It's when did I find my calling? I found my calling when I found out that I was born LaShawn. When my mom always said that you may not, it doesn't matter if you're born Indian, you were born into politics. And so there's no way that you cannot do it. But some of us have this choice, right? We believe in this world that we have a choice. We have a choice to say yes or no to that calling. And sometimes that calling is so strong, you don't have a choice because every time you turn around, it's in your face and you have to do it and you pick it up. And so at some point, I left my nonprofit job for 12 years working at the American Indian Child Resource Center. And I fell backwards and I said, ancestors catch me. And they did. And they've never let me go. So that's the wonderful way that I have so many connections with many of you that's in this room, with Chief Caleen Sisk, that we've been doing the Run for Salmon for 8 years together, that we've been working with our relatives in Alta Aurora and in all over the Pacific, that we have brought in young people from all different Indigenous backgrounds to have their hands back in the land and to re-engage people, human beings in our territory, to understand what their responsibilities are for land and water that they live and work and play on.
Thank you. I wanted to take a moment, if we could, to share a special 3-minute video that was made by the Sacred Land Film Project. And Toby McLeod is here in the audience. Thank you for allowing us to share that video of the recent history and victory of the Sogorea Land Trust and Corrina and her family.
The city of Berkeley started on the shores of what we now call the San Francisco Bay. Before the university, before California cuisine, before landfills and parking lots, my people settled here in Hutchins. More than 5,000 years ago, my Ohlone ancestors built the first fishing village on the bay. At the heart of it was a freshwater creek and 2 massive shell mounds. Archaeologists officially recorded a boundary for the site in 2003. Making it eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. After the gold rush, the Spanger family built a restaurant, and Strawberry Creek flowed right through their grotto. The shell mounds were scraped away to fertilize farm fields and pave city streets. In 1907, The site was studied and mapped by archaeologist Nels Nelson. It was landmarked by the city of Berkeley in 2000. Today, the heart of our ancient village is threatened by a 5-story retail and condo project. But we have a different vision for the best use of this land: a green space and a cultural park. In this one area left unbuilt, a 2.2-acre parking lot known as 1900 4th Street, my people still go to remember our ancestors with prayer and ceremony. This is where people lived and died, laughed and cried, and buried our ancestors in the Shellmounds. Ohlone people are still here, and we have a vision for this sacred site, not for the commercial development being proposed, but a green space with flowing water, a memorial park where we can rebury our ancestors who were taken away to museums, a place for reflection and ceremony for all. On the top, my people could see fires built on shell mounds across the bay. This is where we sang the Old One spirits out through the Western Gate. This is the birthplace of Berkeley.
Thank you for thank you for letting us share that, Dr. Hutchings. And if you could play the loop while she, yes. Okay.
So te mea tūtahi he mihi atu ki a koutou ki ngā mana whenua o te rohi nei. Greetings to traditional peoples whose lands we stand on. We come as guests, so ka nui te mihi aroha ki a koutou i ngā rangatira, i ngā wahine mā, i ngā whānau, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora everybody. Really humbled, and I just need to take a minute actually, because I can feel the grief in the room. I can see my whanaunga from Aotearoa and ka hiki mai ngā roimata. The tears are flowing. The tears of the water, the tears of the river, the tears of which the salmon swim. Ka nui te mihi aroha ki a koutou ngā tangata takitaki. I don't really know where to start. I'm in spirit with all of you. When was my calling for this work? It was before I was born. I was a starseed, like all of us. On the Indian side of my whakapapa, of my genealogy, my grandfather, my family, we're from Gujarat. We're from a village called Matwad out near Dundee Beach. And this is the area where Gandhiji, where he defied British rule, and he picked up the salt because the British came and they decided that they would put tax on the salt. And he decided that that was not a goer, and he marched with my family and many other families across Gujarat, and many, many women. And what people don't understand about the salt marches in the time of Gandhiji, that actually Indian women were really active in that movement. So I think of those women in that lineage who I have never met, but who actually carried me as a starseed. So my calling was already laid out. My path was already laid out before I emerged into this realm, into Tau Marama, into this realm of light. Really resonates with me about a calling. It's like, can you turn it off? Can you turn it off? Can I have a break today? Can we do something else? I've never been able to break it. And just before I left and I came up here, my mum said to me, why are you doing all of this? Why do you just keep going and doing all of this? And I said, don't you understand? Babaji's on my shoulders. My tupuna are on my shoulders. This is why we do it. And of course she understood straight away, just that protective mother of not wanting us to burn out, to keep going every day, every day, every day. I'm a food farmer. I'm a Māori organic grower. I'm a verified Hua Parakori, Māori organic Indigenous grower. And I've worked on the land for 2 decades. I grow food. We live on a slaughter-free farm. But most importantly, I tend to our soil deity, Hini Ahuoni. I grow microbes. I farm photosynthesis. I love the nematodes. I love bacteria. I love mycorrhizal fungi. I'm up for it all. And so in the course of this panel, I really want to share a little bit more with you about the work that we're doing to uplift the mana, the authority and the prestige of Hini Ahuoni. Kuaia he atua, she is our deity. And Aotearoa New Zealand is a country that is founded on agricultural colonisation. One of the first things we did, or the colonisers did, was to strip our land of our forests. We have the highest rate of biodiversity decline anywhere in the world, but it's never talked about. Clean, green New Zealand. Well, clean, green, pastoral, colonised New Zealand. We produce enough food to feed 50 million people. We can't even feed the 5 million people in our country. We export all of our nutrients offshore. So our soils are at risk. And that's the kaupapa that I'm on at the moment in terms of food sovereignty, soil sovereignty, and seed sovereignty. Kia ora. With that little, I can't see the animation. Just keep a little bit of that. Okay. I can't actually see the screen, but there's an animation that's looping up there. And this is how we are visualising through Indigenous design, working with Indigenous designers, what constitutes a Māori food system. So we often hear our food systems are broken, our Indigenous food systems are broken. Where do we start? Well, ours aren't broken. These are our food systems. This is our worldview. This is Rangi Nui, our Sky Father, Papatuanuku, our Earth Mother. These are all of the representations across our tribes in there with both contemporary and traditional foods. So we are growing food. We are feeding our people. We are repairing our Indigenous foodways. And we hope by through the different type of research work that we do and the different type of digital storytelling, the filmmaking work that we do, that actually we can inspire our people and remind us that we're whole, that we are part of our food systems, that we are the food actually, we are the cultural landscapes. Ko te rahi ruru, that is the tangi of the ruru. But it's also too, it's a reminder that the soil and the stars are connected. The microbes in the soil are just a reflection of the microbes out in the stars. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Can we talk about the role of Indigenous women in this work and how that's important to each of our respective communities, or maybe all of our communities? What is the role of women in this important work?
Oh, it's an established order. That's how women work. I think that Indigenous leadership or tribal leaderships and I'm just referencing us as being in this world, being in this environment, being in connection with all of the living things in our environment, is that our creation story says that we came out of Mount Shasta, out of the spring, out of Buyumpuyuk. And we came out with all of the other beings that took life forms to take care of Mother Earth and helping each other. So even the plants along the river, the fish rely on, the bugs along the river are connected to that. And so everything is connected and has a balanced place. Acorn trees, the bluebirds, blue jays, us, the deer, we have to share all that. And we have to understand that sharing. And there's no better people that know how to share than a mother. Among her children, her nieces, nephews, her grandchildren, her life is to build that kind of sharing and taking care of everybody who is in that realm. Not just blood relatives that are in that realm, but all the people who are part of that. And so we have had male leaders. My Grams' father, Dalakantilama, he was the leader of the Winnemem for a long time through the killing time, right up until the early 1900s. And then Grams became the leader for 68 years. And in 2000, I was transitioned into that, even though before that, we always know before, but we never really want it to happen. But it happened. And the next leader is also a woman. But my grandma says it's time because Mother Earth is in a sick state. And they need women leaders to make her well, because the women leaders are going to take care of all of those things. They're going to notice what needs to be done with the land, the trees, the waters, the birds. You know, all of those things are important to getting a healthy Mother Earth back. And it has taken a rapid change, like Corrina was saying about Strawberry Creek. That happened to lots of creeks in California. And the rivers all got diverted. The floodplains all got built on, and it doesn't work the way it did before. And as it goes through those kinds of changes, Mother Earth gets sick. It's kind of like putting a tourniquet on your arm. You know, some of the rivers don't flow anymore. You lose things. Sometimes you can't get them back. But I think that we're at that time, and that through the spiritual part of things is that the women are rising up, and that through that direction and leadership, it's going to be changing. Some men are not going to like it, and they're going to oppose it, and they're going to try to make it so that you look like you don't know what you're doing. But we're going to, you know, we have to stand fast, and we have to help them understand that the way that they think is not what Mother Earth needs right now. Those men need to stand with us. They need to protect us. When we are pouring our hearts out for Mother Earth, they should be our warriors standing with us. They don't exactly know how to do that yet. This society doesn't teach them how to do that and still look like a warrior. You know. I'm sorry. But it isn't that women don't need men with them. It is that we're at this time. You know, open your eyes, open your ears, look around. Look and see what's going on. And think about, what can you do to help? Not tear down, not throw the arrows at us. It's like, how can you help us? And figure it out, you know. That's what I'm struggling with in my own tribe, is that, and I think that any time that women leaders look like they're successful or they're getting something back, there always has to be this undertow of where's my part? What do I get? It's like, well, jump on this wagon and help, and then you'll see what you get, because we're getting salmon back.
So we could say it all back. That would be better. Get it all back. Then people get this fear, like, what's going to happen to me? Thinking that the same oppression that was caused, that they caused that we would turn around and do the same thing, and it's unfounded fears. But I think that when we talk about what it is that why now, right? Why women's leadership? And I want to say that women have always been leaders. It's not just now, that women have always been leaders. And in many of our indigenous cultures, there was matriarchal systems that were put in place. And women decided when the ceremonies were going to happen and when to send out the runners to tell people to come, who was going to cut the wood for the ceremony, who was going to be in charge of the food, who was going to be the dancers, who were going to be the singers. It was the women that called those things. Women always also have the songs for our medicines and our foods and our waters and our basket materials. They have songs and help, right, to bring life into this world, along with our two spirit non-binary relatives. It has always been a part of their responsibilities to do that work with us, right? But not only that, it's also been our responsibilities as our relatives are making their way to the next world and transitioning. It has been women's work to do that as well. And so just what Caleen was saying, Chief was saying, was about, that women know how to take care of all. And I think we could look at COVID, that what happened recently, and we could look at some of the women leaders around the world and how the citizens that they were taking care of in a better way, rather than some of these places that had capitalism only on their mind, and how to get us back into workplaces and how to go back to those 8 hours of day of the grind and how to let things like that go, that they didn't take human beings into consideration or anything else, right? We also have to look at what's going on in the world. When we started looking at it, Janelle and I started talking about what is the importance, and getting messages from medicine people saying it is now time for the women to take up their rightful place as leaders again, because we are in trouble. We are in trouble as human beings. We do not have that much time. When we look at the world and who creates wars, we have to look at who has been in charge of the land for hundreds of years, and it has not been women. And when those things happen, it doesn't just affect those particular parts. There's a vibration that goes throughout the world when those wars happen, right? Our Mother Earth is one Earth. And so when she is affected in one portion, it affects all of us. And people do not see that cycle. And so it's our responsibility then to figure out, how do we bring that back into balance? How do we bring this back into balance? How do human beings come back into that circle of life that we were created into? That we have been the younger siblings that have decided to take ourselves outside of that circle. And that when we realize, when we humble ourselves down, when we understand that everything that was created on this earth was created before human beings. Everything that was created here was so that we could survive. There's nothing on this earth that needs a human being in order to thrive and survive. And then we can realize that then what is our responsibility to take care of and be a part of that cycle again? How do we then come back into that circle and remember what our relationalities are to water and air and fire and earth? Then we can come back to that balance again. And so it has to be Indigenous women's leadership that does that. As we are rearing the next generation, and those are those next generations to come, right? That we have to continue to put our foot forward. We have to, because we are invested in those next generations. And so I think that that's what it means for women to be in leadership right now, is for us to just take up our responsibilities. It wasn't until Europeans came to this land and decided that they couldn't talk to no woman, right? They brought misogyny, they brought heteropatriarchy, they brought those foreign diseases to this land. And so because they wouldn't talk to our leaders, and they would only talk to our men. It put our men at a disadvantage because they didn't know. They also lost their sacred responsibilities. And now it's time for us to remember what those sacred responsibilities for those men are, and for them to come, like Chief said, to stand beside us, not in front of us, not behind us, but beside us, to help us to preserve this place for the next 7 generations to come.
Me aro koe ki te hā o hene ahuone, pay heed to the dignity of women. Hene ahuone is also to the deity of our soil, who I talked about earlier. That's a well-known proverb, whakatauki, back home in Aotearoa. Indigenous women, Māori women in Aotearoa have always been leading. We're not just stepping up now, we have always led out. But we have a very violent, masculine, patriarchal, hegemonic, Indigenous force of male leadership in our country. Could throw a few more adjectives in there. And the lateral violence that is being experienced by our younger Indigenous leaders, and these beautiful women sitting in front of me, that's something that for those of us who are decades older really need to think about how we're going to protect and create space so that the young women who are coming forward into these leadership roles are not harmed. It is now not okay for Indigenous men to perpetuate lateral violence against Indigenous women who are moving into leadership roles, and we need to call it out. If I think about that in terms of the taiao, in terms of the environment, and in terms of food and farming, then I call pesticides, GMOs, multinational fertilisers a form of lateral violence as well. So it's the same. And this is what, we don't use the word rematriation in Aotearoa. We look to our whanaunga, our relatives, our leaders on your lands, and we're learning a lot about this movement. We've had a movement or a term, mana wahine. And as somebody who identifies as two-spirit, as takatapui, which is our word for queer in our language, I find the gender binaries, and sometimes in these conversations my head goes, oh, what does that mean then in terms of our Indigenous queerness or our two-spiritedness? And so then I fall back onto this word, mana takatapui. And, or maybe a better way to understand it could be the mana of two-spirited people, which has always been about inclusion. It's always been about everybody being able to feel a part of it. And right now in our country, we are experiencing what I know your country has gone through in the last 5 or 6 years under your previous president. We have a far-right white supremacist government that have just taken power before Christmas. Our Indigenous rights are being extinguished at a rate that we have never seen before. The incremental wins that my parents and my ancestors have fought for, that our leaders have fought for, that we naively thought were bedded in, extinguished. In the first 100 days of this new government's plan, they're extinguishing our treaty rights. They want to have a referendum in our country, have an open debate to ask the country, so what does the treaty actually mean? Let's redefine these principles in a modern era. So we're back on the battle lines. Not that we ever left, but we're back at a battle line where we thought we had moved way forward. Our Indigenous language is now being removed from all government agencies. They've been instructed to not use the Māori names of the agencies, change the agencies' names back to English. So as a mother who put their child, he's now 28, through total immersion school to really uplift our Indigenous language, it's really heartbreaking to have your children question the value of the language that they learnt at school and the place of validity that might hold in our country. So it's at this time that we come in solidarity. We come to your lands to meet with you because we need to join hands. We need to lean in. it's wearying. I see my sister in front of me in tears. It's wearying. We can talk about it in terms of politics and we can talk about it intellectually, but on a soul level and on a heart level, we're weeping. We're really weeping. And they are opening up our conservation estate again for mining after Jacinda Ardern's government put a stop on that. And the latest thing that I've heard is that there's the potential to actually sell our conservation estate off. And so join with us, watch us. We're in mourning, but we're at the battle lines and we're going hard on it, but it's a really, really trying time in our country. We swung from the left and we've gone somewhere where I don't even recognise where we live now and who we live with.
Chief Sisk, can you talk a little bit more about where you're at with your river work and what's going on the McLeod River, and are your salmon coming home and what's happening there?
Such a long story. But I would try to just say a few things about it. In our creation stories, we talk about how each of the spirit beings came outside of Buyumpuyuk, came up through the pool, and they named themselves because Creator had asked them to take a place in Mother Earth and take care of, become part of the care for that. So some of them became hummingbird, and some of them became eagle, and mosquito, and acorn, and blue jay. All of them started choosing everything, except for this last little being who's walking around the fire, walking around the other way. And finally, they get the bright idea they're going to be a bear. But no, it's already been chosen. All the bears have been picked. So it's like, oh, round and around the fire we go. Until they decide, we're going to be human. Went out the door, ran down the trail by the river. The Creator called back the fire spirit and the water spirit, the mountain spirit, and said to them, that one's going to need a lot of help. And as he was discussing that, Salmon had just gone out prior. And so Salmon heard what was going on, turned around and came back and offered his voice for the people so they could communicate better with all other things. And so since that time, we have this tie with the salmons because the salmon doesn't speak anymore. And it is such a keystone animal that holds our world together, from the ocean to the fresh waters and back to the ocean. Each time they come, they all die. And only the young ones will swim out to the ocean and grow up in the ocean, come back, and repeat it. So for us, Winnemums, we always believe that the Nur are directly connected to the sacred because they only do things one time, and each time they come back, they know exactly what to do, and no teachers, no role models, nobody to show them, nobody to tell them. It's like, okay, it's time to go to the ocean now. And when they're in the ocean, nobody says, okay, let's stop, let's find that estuary. No, not that estuary. We have to go to exact same estuary that we came out of. And then no, you can't go up that river because that's not your river. You have to swim all the way up to McLeod at the top of the watershed, 5,000 feet high. You can't stay at the Feather River. And we believe that that is because the Creator has continued to speak with Salmon. And so we believe if we follow Salmon, we're going to be doing the right things. We're going to know more. We're going to learn more about what has been stripped away through boarding schools, through oppression and depression and alcoholism and all of those isms, that we still have that ability because Salmon is still connected to the Creator. And if we follow Salmon, then we have that ability. So when people can come together and figure things out, I mean, you're all in this room right here because Corrina's here, but that's why I'm here. But we have a long way to go on these things, and it takes everybody in each generation. Like we have Tlayo in here, which my granddaughter calls him Samson, because her brother is Solomon. So we have some power behind that, right? Covering all bases. But we're in this for the long haul. And so Shasta Dam's been up since 1940, closed all the salmon from going upriver. We all lost our homes. We were moved out. The young people were shipped to Riverside, to the boarding school, and then into the service. To get out of the boarding schools, they all signed up for the Army, Navy, everything, anything that they could get into. And then when they came home, there was no home. And the salmon came back. There was no way to get to the McCloud River. They jumped and jumped into the dam until they died, trying to get to where they should be. And for 7 years after the dam was put up, that's what happened. Thousands and thousands of salmon would just die at the end of the dam because they couldn't go any higher. So now people believe that we still have winter run salmon. And when science really gets down to it, it's that those winter run salmon are not actually DNA winter run salmon. They have some little marker that indicates they might have been. The first fishery on the West Coast was put on our river. And from there, Livingston Stone sent salmon around the world trying to make them live in other places. And the only place that they survived was in New Zealand. And they thrived in New Zealand. So in 2004, we did a war dance against the United States, made the papers in 87 places around the world, and New Zealand was one place. And they sent us an email saying, hey, do you want your salmon back? So we're on this journey. And this is 3 years into the making with CDFW, and NOAA. But we have been pounding on their door since we went to New Zealand, and some of the Naitahu leaders, John Wilkie and his wife and a few other people came, and we tried to knock on the door of the fisheries here, and nothing happened. 2011, all the way up till 2 years ago, 3 years ago, DWR tried to put a apparatus on our river. And we said no. We didn't really know if that would work or not. But apparently, we had sued the Forest Service for 9 years, came out with a ruling that said the Forest Service has to follow its regulations. They can't be destroying our sacred sites no more. It's like, okay, that's a good win, right? They got to follow their regulations. And they have to treat you as a tribe with consultation, that you have that much interest in the lands and the rivers that they control. So 3 years ago, they tried to put that up there. Couldn't, because we said no. So the next year, CDFW and Department of Water Resources want to meet with us. And they want to meet with us about the fish and about putting winter run up there. And we said, what? Hatchery fish? No. And they guaranteed that these hatchery fish didn't have parasites or anything like that, because that's what we accused them of. But we said, if we do that part, because we're not really interested in that part, we're interested in bringing back the salmon from New Zealand, and we're interested in building a volitional passage. Those are two things that, we'll do this part with you, but you have to do this part. So we're in this for 1 year now with a co-management agreement, and we have successfully helped them produce 80,000 eggs. That has not very many go out to sea, right? because they have to catch them before they go in the lake. And they didn't really have a really good way of catching them. So this last year, out of 80,000 eggs, we only caught like 8,000 fry that were going out. But we're arguing with them now because we believe that the fish are still in the river. Normally, these fish will stay in the river for almost up to a year. They'll be 5 and 6 inches when they go out to the ocean, meaning that they will also stay out in the ocean longer. Nobody worries about them. You know, they're 3 years out there, and it's like they used to be like 5 to 7 years out there and coming in much bigger. So we have that, and we're still hassling over this part. We're hassling over the science, the parasites, and the bacteria. They're worried, and it's like it doesn't make any sense to me. Like New Zealand has like 8 parasites or pathogens, and 2 of them are from the fish the fish farms in the North Island, and the other 6 are the same kind of pathogens that we already have here. But we're supposed to go over there and study them. Supposed to go over there and take 145 fish. And in the Mellish, there's only like 350 fish that come in the Mellish. And that's where we want to take fish from. And it's like, okay, only 145 fish out of the 350. And they all have to be female, meaning that's 5,000 eggs per female that is not going to be spawned. It's like, we can't do that. New Zealand fishery says, no, we're not doing that. So we have a stalemate going on. But, you know, we're still fighting for the fact that they got 8 pathogens in the entire country. We have 29 just in California. And they want us to test for the 29 pathogens when New Zealand only has 8. It's like, how are you going to test for pathogens that they don't even have? It's like, well, maybe they didn't test for them. So the struggle goes on, and we're continuing to stay in the in the boxing match, and demanding that they pay for the process that we're going through. But it's like, I can see how science gets nowhere, the fish get nowhere, because it's like, let's do this. This means something. Oh no, we got to study that for 5 years. And we got to kill all those fish. And it's like, oh, we're going to kill all those fish in 2 years of taking from that river. And then we're going to go back and say, hey, can you give us some eggs? It's like, But we're trying to build a biosecurity system on the McLeod that would be an off-river system, and get the fisheries to agree to bring eyed eggs from New Zealand and put them in that system, which is not going to harm any other. I mean, even if they did have pathogens, they're not going to have pathogens that they're not going to pick up in the river, right? When they go out to the ocean, they swim back. Every pathogen that's in the river, they're going to be exposed to and bring. But it's one thing after another. It's like, well, the farm fish are in the ocean. So when the fish go out to the ocean in New Zealand, they'll commingle with the fish that's close to that area. So they probably pick up those pathogens, and then they'll have them. It's like, well, do you know for a fact that pathogens that are saltwater pathogens actually come into freshwater? Or do they come in to the freshwater and pick up the pathogens? Well, they don't know. They don't know where the pathogens jump on them. It's like, well, does the salt water knock them off? If they come out from the river with pathogens, does salt water affect it? So we're in big battles over those things. We're, doing the best we can. We're demanding that they, give a fair amount of money so that we can continue to be in the fight for salmon, because we believe that they have to come back. The volitional passage has to be there. So, thank you.
Jessica, can you talk a little bit more about the work that you do on the farm?
first of all, just quickly, just to respond, as Indigenous peoples, we used to have native to native trading routes, right? And so the settler colonial governments are just right in the way of that. So I wish we could help. But it's my tribe, Ngaitahu, who you're working with, so kanui te mihi ki a koe. I think the restoration of our native to native trade routes, especially around seed and food, is really important. You know, we have taonga kai, special food, traditional foods, peru, that came from Peru. And so, you know, our people used to travel. We're water people. That's how we connected. This is how we make relationships. It's across the water. But these settler colonial biosecurity laws inhibit us from enacting our native to native trade routes. So, question, on the farm, what do we do? Well, as I'm getting older, I'm realising how long am I actually going to be able to do this for. It's a lot of work. We grow a lot of food, and we grow food outside of the capitalist economy. So we're not growing food, selling it for money into the market. We're growing food to share with our family, with our extended family, and with our community. But what we're really doing is we're modelling how to do food farming in a way that uplifts the mana of the soil, that uplifts hini a hooni. No dig, no mechanised agriculture, definitely no GMOs, no sprays. We're working with the natural rhythms, but we're working with the natural rhythms in a way which just mimic the rhythms of who we are in our daily life. And so I think the biggest practice for us on the farm has been to change our daily rhythm to fit in with the rhythm of the farm and what we do. So depending where the moon rises, when it rises, when tamanui te rā, when the sun rises, and when the sun sets, that determines everything. And so really it's just, you know, we are nature beings, but it's actually farming in a way where we really pay practice to that. That is our practice. So in part of the settlement processes for a lot of our tribes in New Zealand, they've been returned land, and they're just moving straight into very conventional agribusiness. So it's beef and sheep for the global commodities market, and it's all pesticides and chemicals. But this is our Indigenous tribes that are doing this, and so there's a lot of unlearning that we need to do with our men, with our male farmers. This is intergenerational. This is the only way that they know. They don't know how to grow food on large scales without pesticides, without being dependent on globalised agriculture. So what we're doing on the farm is modelling a different way, and it's women. It's women who are modelling a different way. It's takatapui, it's queer women who are coming to join us, Indigenous women who are modelling a different way of food and farming, and we're returning back to our Indigenous values to restore our Indigenous foodways. So our movement at the moment is really focused on uplifting our soils because we're at a crisis. We only have 50 global harvests left in Earth Mother because our global soils are so degraded. And then where do we go? Then how do we find our connection through our foods back to our Indigenous divine senses? So our work at the moment is all about uplifting the mana of the soil and bringing some awareness to that. If you were to think about that in a scientific framework, I'm trained and worked at that interface of Western science and traditional knowledge, we're about biology-led agriculture. And so we think about the soil in terms of the microbes, not in terms of NPK. You have NPK over here. It's the lovely chemicals that every farmer in New Zealand puts on their soil. And so when you get a soil test done in New Zealand in conventional farming, it's based on a chemical analysis. And so if it's chemically deficient in something, you can just pour those chemicals onto the soil. But if we take a biology-led approach, then we're actually understanding the relationships that are happening in the soil between the fungi, the bacteria, the nematodes and the protozoas. And so that's the kind of unlearning and the relearning that we are wanting to lead out on with our work.
Thank you.
You want to show it now? Okay.
If you could show the film from Dr. Jessica Hutchings.
At a time when we have lost our global footing, our soils have never been so precious. Our food systems are broken, our soil is exhausted, we're facing a climate meltdown and a biodiversity crisis. With only 50 harvests left from the soil due to extractive capitalism, it is the time for a return to the sacred. What would it mean to live in right livelihood with our soils, to be in a relationship with this atua, this deity, who we know as Hiniahuoni? Soils are our silent ally in our food system. Part of our work as Indigenous women in the movement of organics and food sovereignty, seed and soil sovereignty, is to walk as lightly as we can on our soils, to do no harm, to elevate the mana, to elevate the mauri, the life force and the vibration of our soils. Come and join us as an investor, join us as an ally and as a partner in this digital storytelling journey to elevate the mana, to elevate the power and the prestige of our soil deity, Hiniahuoni.
You can find a longer film online that I watched last night that I really enjoyed also. So final question is twofold, and if we can just go down the line, and what advice do you have for young people that want to get involved, start a journey in land tending, tending the wild, and how can all of our allies in the room support your efforts and your organizations?
Well, one is always money, right? We have a chance to buy back the Balibaka, which is one of the last villages that we lost that was still out of the Shasta Dam footprint. The Westlands Water District is selling it for $40 million. It's 3,000 acres, 7 miles of river, which is what we need for the New Zealand salmon to come back to have them offshore, because we own no land on the McLeod River. So that's one thing, but just in the 8 years that we have done Run for Salmon, and it's kind of it's a unique story in that, we're way up north in McLeod River, and we were going to do this run. But prior to that, I had met Corrina during the occupation of the Shellmound. And while we were there, Palm and I were going home, and it's like, oh man, that's a perfect place to dance for the salmon. It's like, oh yeah. So later, when we decided to do the Run for Salmon, it's like, oh, Corrina's got to be a part of this, no doubt about it. It's like, we're going to have to pull her in because we have to dance there, because right there is where the salmon come in the Golden Gate, and they go out the Sacramento River. They come down the river, and they come right into the delta there, and they go right out the gates. And so it's like they're coming and going all the time there. And so that's kind of how we got started. But over the time, we've had a lot of helpers, supporters of Run for Salmon. We've ended up dancing on the ocean for the whales and the salmon, because whales are a big part of the salmon success. When the salmon come down the river and they go out the Golden Gate, they swim south. Scientists don't know this, but they swim south first, and they meet the whales that are calving in Baja and Santa Barbara and all along the coast down there. Then they all swim north. But they're partners. The salmon feed everything. That's what they do. Everything from the time they're an egg to the time they're a fry to the time they're a large fish. When they come back, they do the same thing. They feed the bugs. Their carcasses go into the soil, into the trees and plants and birds and bears and everything, and us too. But that being said, the incredible people who have helped with Run for Salmon are sharing all of this and showing what we're supposed to be doing to the young people. We have young people from all walks of life, all stages. Some people are young people and they're just old people. They got old, but they were still young. But they still could learn. And I think our toughest ones to learn are those who are in college programs or PhD programs that have to unlearn before they can move. You know? So in our project, we have a Maori scientist, and she is a human cellular scientist, not a fish scientist, because we can't deal with fish scientists because they get in the way with themselves. And so she's learning right along, and so it's like, yeah, perfect. And we have people working for the project who we've never had these kind of jobs. There's nowhere you could get that kind of experience. And if you have too much fish biology, we can't use you. It's hard, but you have to be a quick learner, right? And so we're not asking you to believe in everything that we believe, but we are asking you to believe in the fish, believe in the water, learn from this whole, be open and be creative. But it is hard. It is hard. We're finding with our folks that are working with us, we're not easy to work for. It's like, what? What do you mean? But they also are learning a lot on the Run for Salmon about the river and the eagles and all kinds of things that go through them. And I think part of that is the healing from the things that have happened to them that we don't even know about, that the prayers of these places are putting them back together so they can be helpful, they can be productive wherever they go. They're going to take that knowledge with them, and they're going to be able to mobilize. Like, you take these people who are paralyzed onto the river and they get flipped over in the boat. It's like something going on. Or like Maria's boat was sinking in the bay. But I'm really glad that a lot of young people are coming out, a lot of people of different races and colors and can join at different places. And that I'm thankful for all of the people who are helping it to happen. All of our cooks, all of the people who get us food, get the donations coming in, because it's a long journey and it's a long time. And Corrina gets tired, but I don't. And we sing songs and we make new songs like you did. And we have different tribal people coming in and sharing, you know. And so it's a good thing for Mother Earth, for the people to come together like that. It's just a healthy thing for us to start seeing the good in each other and try to bring that good out, you know. And so I'm thankful that we're all together like this and that we have been moving ahead, as well as Pua Case, who has been a very strong supporter. And the struggles of the mountains there, because our mountains are connected to that. And so we can't forget all of those things around Mother Earth that are happening. So, Kuki Arimauna. Oh, thank you.
So young folks, what can you do? Everything. Because we're getting tired. Even though Caleen said it was just me that's tired, I think we're all tired. You know, when we started this this last fight, it was 8 years, and I got 2 more grandbabies as a result of that, right? And I'm blessed, right? But I'd really love to spend some time with them. And I think that one of the wonderful things about our kids coming up in ceremony, like going to run for Salmon, is that they get to see ceremony in real time, that they get to participate, that they look forward to it, that they make relatives on that ceremonial way, that they're able to do it so that they're able to be like human beings again. When Janelle and I did with 6 other folks, Wounded Knee Dale Campo, and his niece Kim is here somewhere. She's also on our board of directors. We took over Sigorte in 2011. That's a village site, one of our last strongholds on the Carquinez Strait that Caleen was talking about, where we met. And we took over that site for 109 days, and our young people were our security. Our young people came and they decided that that's what they were going to do. We created this together, not Janella and I and these 6 people. Folks showed up for us because we had been doing this education around what shellmounds were. It's not something that's taught about in schools. With all those years of education, when the city of Vallejo finally filed bankruptcy in 2011, they gave away $30,000 worth of permits for free for the park district to destroy that site. And we put out a call and asked people to join us to protect that site. And Fred Short lit a sacred fire that lasted 109 days, and we had people from all different places come and do ceremony at that fire, including the Winnemem. And as a result of that, when we decided that I don't know, you wake up and you pray with people every day. You share food with them. You share something that you stand for. That you go to sleep and you pray together. And that something changes in your DNA. That it's what we're supposed to do as human beings, is to live in community. When we left that place, I went home to this and went back to my regular job. But it was weird, because you close your door, you don't pray with the people next door, you don't share food with them. Sometimes you don't even know who they are. And so we were looking for that as human beings. What does it mean to be a human being again? And so when we decided to start Sigorte Land Trust, it was really about trying to figure out, how do we do that? How do we bring that feeling back into our lands here in the urban area? And it was really asking young people who had no experience working on land, who had no access to land as growing up as urban Native people, to come and work the land. And they were like, what do we do? And you figure it out. And that's what people do. They figure out. They become in relationship with those plant relatives and figure out who they like to live next to. And they figure out how that all works. And it gives us the ability to do that again. It gives us the ability to put our hands in the soil, our Mother Earth, ability to work on repairing those creeks that have been damaged. So that's what we ask for. We ask for young people to say yes, take a leap. Don't think you have to come with all kinds of experience. Come with your best self. And then we ask young people, can they make a commitment that this is more than just a job? That this is really what we're trying to do, is show you a different way of life. That so if you're coming in with this idea of having to clock in and clock out, that's not going to work. But that we're trying to take care of you as best we can. And so we grew really big, really fast over COVID. And I think we have like 27 people working for us now, which is wild. But Janella and I never started a nonprofit thinking that that was what we were going to do. And what I always say is that anybody that works for Sigorte Land Trust is really learning on the job, including Janella and I, right? is that we figure out how to do it together in the best way, trying to figure out how to be good human beings. So I say all of that, relatives, because we also want you on the land. Because when we live and work and play in places like this, that's covered with asphalt and cover up our creeks, and covered up with cement and buildings, that you can't always see what it's like to be a part of the land. And so in order for us to all change, we all need to be a part of that healing process. And so we ask you to come and help us to participate in what does that look like to rematriate land, to bring California natives back where they're supposed to be, so that they can put in those good things in our lands again, so that we can continue to grow, right? They all have relations. And then I'm just going to echo what Caleen said for other folks that aren't young people, is that beautiful dream that you saw in the animation, that didn't come from just me. It came from thousands and thousands of people that I am forever grateful for, that they said yes at the same time that we did, and that they didn't give up, that they showed up to meetings, and they showed up to pray, and they showed up to paint, and they showed up to protect, that you could all do that. And if anybody wants to know, this land back that we're celebrating cost us $27 million. It is not that some settler decided that they were going to give us back our land. We are buying back our sacred site. And so we were blessed that we had some funders that saw that vision and understood what their responsibility was to give back those resources in order for us to do that. But this comes at a huge cost, right? Because I look also as the leader of this particular land, and I understand what $27 million could do for people that are living on the streets. I understand what it could do for our Indigenous young people. And still, what we had to do was to free that shell mound. And in this time of the world, when all of us are feeling this heaviness, we needed some hope, and those ancestors understood that. And so they made it possible. It was not me, it was us. And so thank you, relatives.
Everything back. 80% of our Indigenous population in Aotearoa are disconnected from their tribal identities or from their tribal homelands. The majority of our young people are living in urban areas. In 2045, our population of Indigenous peoples in New Zealand is going to be 1/5 of the population, if not more, and the majority of that is going to be young people. So how can we reconnect our young people back to the whenua and back to communities with the lateral violence that they experience every day, the haves and the have-nots? And I'm not talking about, the have money and don't have money. I'm talking have Indigenous identity and don't have Indigenous identity. We need to stop beating on our young people who are coming to understand themselves in their Indigenous spirit, because it is harmful. And so I just say to young people, believe in yourself. We've got your back. Doesn't matter if you can't speak your language, if you don't know where you're from, you have an Indigenous spirit inside you, and you're with us. And so to create safe spaces, I feel like that's our role as older people, is to create safe spaces to enable young people to come with us on this movement. So keep believing. We need you. If you're not with us, then our work is in vain. Where then is the intergenerational, where then does the intergenerational work go? So Mihi aroha ki a koe. Kia koutou katoa.
That concludes our first panel in the Indigenous Forum for 2024. Can we please give a warm welcome and send off for...
Pipi para